a podcast to honor the gods.
This better come with a sacrifice.
Deus Ex Media.
Content and Capable recognises the Indigenous people on the land of which we record this podcast on, the Bowendig people. We offer a respect to elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Sovereignty was never ceded. Welcome to Content and Capable, the podcast that seemingly can't quite answer the question about what the hell's going on with the weather. My name's Sam, I am your host and somehow resident weatherman. Don't ask, everything's broken. Fall's here, spring's here, depending on what hemisphere you're on, it's all a mess. Joining me is Meagan, one half of the Spooky Science Sisters. Welcome, Meagan.
Hello.
It's lovely to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for coming. Can you explain a little bit about what Spooky Science Sisters is all about?
Yes. So I'm one half of it. The other half is my sister-in-law, Paige. And basically during the COVID lockdown back in 2020, we were super bored and we both really like spooky things, and we are both scientists, or at least come from a science background, and decided to make a show where we could take like a skeptical look at the science behind various paranormal phenomena, from like ghosts and cryptids like Bigfoot, and then sometimes we sort of go off the rails and do like purely just, terrifying science related things. But yeah, looking at spooky things from a scientific perspective and trying to explain them through a scientific lens, which is pretty much just debunking them every time.
Yeah, how did the podcast start? Like, was it something that you were always interested in doing, or was it something that Paige was always interested in doing, and then you two found each other?
Not at all. So Paige is my sister-in-law, so I'm married to her brother, and we've been good friends for a long time, so I got lucky in that respect. And I think just when everything shut down for COVID, I was not really working for a few weeks because I worked a lab job. So it was like I was sort of doing what I could remotely, but you can't really remotely work in a lab. So in the meantime, I was like home with my then almost 1-year-old daughter, and just started listening to a lot of podcasts, and I don't know, it's just like right time, right place. It popped into my head like, I think I could do this. And like so many podcasts sort of do things from a you suspend your disbelief, and like every ghost story, every scary story is real. And I was like, okay, but what if we approached it from a different perspective of like, hey, I need proof to accept this. So like what's out there that exists? So I don't know. At some point, I just decided that I had enough audacity to try it myself. So
I do love the audacity line. It's like, at some point you feel confident enough. You go, yep, this is easy. Why do people say this is hard?
Not
and
knowing
then you
that
actually get into it.
Yes, not knowing that podcasting is like, once you start, is just an incredibly difficult thing, as I'm sure you know, to get right. And yeah, our first episode is just like so terrible. But we left it up because it's like this little memory of like, man, we've come so far since we started.
It's hilarious. Some of the like first episodes I've listened to, even like, especially like podcasts with big casts who maybe have not like quite realized it's not very enjoyable to listen to, 10 people yelling each other at once. who like are like setting the ground rules and like how are things going to work, and it's all these lofty goals. And then obviously through the pandemic we all discovered Zoom and, you know, recording remotely and doing things, you know, we don't have to be physically near each other to record stuff. It's been a fascinating transition, and watching the transition back actually has been really interesting as well. The amount of podcasts that have cropped up since the pandemic that are now like in person and also video, which like I'm not a big fan of because it's just extra work for me to put a podcast together. But, you know, it's interesting that like the swing one way and then the swing back as well.
Yeah, and we've sort of watched a lot of podcasts that started during the pandemic that I remember, you know, starting around the same time, and that have now like decided, you know, they're done doing that podcast. So it's like interesting to see who pops up and who ends up not making it. And yeah.
Yeah. It's crossed my mind like a few times. I'm like, is this actually too hard for me to do? And then I have conversations and I go, I actually really love it. And it is like this weird, like, quiet brag sometimes. Like, oh, what are you doing this weekend? And I'm like, just recording a couple of podcast episodes. You know, it is what it is.
Yeah. No, I think it's good. And yeah, I'm just happy we made it this far.
No, 100%. Look, how did you go about doing the research to kind of find the scientific backgrounds of, you know, some of these spooky stories and mysteries?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot of just starting out where everybody starts, which is Google. And I think... Yeah, so like for a lot of topics, it's literally like I just type in, say we're doing an episode on vampires, like I remember just typing in like, oh, science of vampires, and usually you'll get like sort of a lot of popular science articles that pop up with, you know, diseases, in that case, diseases and other things that might have sparked vampire stories. And from there, I usually try to trace them back to primary sources, so try to find more academic sources that can back those ideas up. But yeah, that's pretty much how it goes. And most of the time we end up doing like way deeper dives than we ever think we're going to. And yeah, and there's just a lot of examples where like the original story is very scary, or the monster or whatever we're talking about is very scary, but like things that inspired it are equally terrifying. So that's sort of a fun thing to find out.
It's a fascinating thing because, you know, you'd think that sometimes, you know, delving into the science or like the research behind it and the historical or, you know, significance behind these topics would make it boring or, you know, dispel the rumors. But I'm guessing it doesn't most of the time.
Right. Yeah. I think for pretty much everything we've talked about, well, really for everything we've talked about on the podcast, like I'm very much and I think Paige would say the same thing, that we're like hardline skeptics. Like I don't really think there's anything paranormal going on in the world, which I know is probably disappointing to some people. But I just love the stories so much. And yeah, I just think there's so many weird things that can happen with people's brains, or like weird ways that people have tried to explain diseases or whatever that they didn't understand in the past that turned into monster stories. So it's just been this really fun journey of like learning that sure, like paranormal things might just be stories, but like they've always been really important in human history and like served these very important purposes. So yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, it's interesting the way that, like, our history plays a role in it, you know? Like, the way that these stories transform and that element of truth, or that true story that sparks it all, or that true phenomenon, you know, that is the centerpiece for a story, the way it changes over time, and the way that, you know, our storytelling changes it to suit, you know, whatever time period we might be living in, or, you know, the conversations we're having.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like even now, just with more modern examples, the horror stories that show up in media or movies or TV shows that are being made now are like always a reflection of like what people are most afraid of at the time. And like it's very much the same with like monsters and folklore and stuff. So yeah, it's really neat. It's like we're sort of sitting at this intersection of like history and science and various types of science, from like psychology to epidemiology, I guess, or like medical science, and yeah, a lot of things. But yeah,
all of those pandemic movies and TV shows that came out after COVID-19, you know. Oh,
for sure. Yeah, I'm honestly surprised that there haven't been like more zombie things that have showed up since then.
It's interesting because like, and then we talk about like politics and world politics, and you look at all that. I've just started watching Fallout on Amazon Prime, and just all of these like nuclear like conversations we're having, you know, the Chernobyl documentary and the movies and everything. I'm like, wow, we're still obsessed with like nuclear technology and the scariness of all of that as well.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we're pretty good at scaring ourselves.
Yeah. What's been some of the most interesting things that you've learnt about while hosting the podcast?
Oh, that's a great question. And we've covered a lot of ground. I think some of my favorite stuff that we've talked about is, so I think the ghost stuff for sure. And we're kind of getting ready to do like another dive into all of this fall, but there is just so much psychology that goes into why people might see ghosts that I just think is really fascinating. Like all the different ways that your brain can sort of like misfire and turn it into a ghost, whether it's because of like a neurological illness or some sort of mental illness, or even just like everyday stuff, like how common hallucinations are and everything like that. Like it's really freaky and fascinating. And yeah, lately we just did this big deep dive into it, and I was like, I think at this point a ghost could like manifest in front of my face and like punch me in the face and then disappear, and I would be like, wow, that is a really weird thing that my brain did. Like I don't think I would believe that it was actually a ghost, just because there's so much of that. And then some of the other just like small facts that I've really loved. One of our earliest episodes that we did was on the boogeyman, and finding out that is like, there's the science behind it is like not too many people have done like scientific studies or anything into it, but what is there is that it's like this ubiquitous thing. Like there's so basically every culture, every country has some sort of boogeyman figure, and there's obviously stuff like sleep paralysis and all this that can play into it, but also just learning that like it might be a way that kids, young children, like basically learn to contextualize and deal with like the concept of fear, is by like externalizing it into some sort of boogeyman and then like learning to get over it. And I think that is really weird and cool. So it's a lot of like the psychology stuff, I guess, is my favorite.
Yeah, I love that. I love, you know, figuring out why these things have happened. Mm-hmm. And I suppose, you know, Is your background in, biology and psychology, or is it more in, some of the other, like, more material sciences?
No, not biology or psychology at all. So, yeah, like, what ground do I have to stand on to be talking about any of these things?
No, I just find it funny because it's, it's one of those things where you have that, like, curiosity and that scientific process and scientific understanding.
Yeah.
And, like, taking that well beyond, your chosen science field is always really interesting.
Yeah, so I did my PhD in geochemistry, or just more broadly geology, and looking at large-scale volcanic eruptions. So, like, obviously we've done like a sort of existential dread, like volcanic super volcano episode before, or a couple of them, because I had to. So like I'm like physical sciences, geology. I'm a chemist now, so none of this stuff is what I'm trained for. But I think what's important is that as a scientist, and Paige, was a chemist. She was a chemistry major when she was in college. What you get good at is like learning how to research a topic and follow up on things and like figure out all the steps along the way and the information that you need. And so, yeah, that's why I feel like I have the audacity to talk about these things, even though I'm not an expert.
Oh, no, I don't think anyone, I think it's the greatest part about podcasting is that you don't have to be an expert on a topic, but if you've done the research and you can present it in a way that's entertaining and informative, there's nothing stopping, like, anyone doing anything, really.
Right. Which in some cases
But obviously, I think...
Oh, go ahead.
I was about to say, obviously, I think there's advantages of like understanding and being familiar with the scientific process and, the context of science, especially when you're looking back at historical records and things like that.
Yeah. That's definitely been beneficial. And yeah, I was just gonna be snarky for a second and say like, well, obviously some people like go in and sort of misinterpret the whole do your own research thing and like think they're experts after a YouTube video, but
100%. I think it's important as well. It's interesting. I've been listening to a lot of podcasts where like one person will do the research and the other person is like learning and asking like follow-up questions along the way. And I think that format's like really great because it allows like you to bounce off each other, or someone does like half the research and someone does the other half, and you just like fill in the gaps and bounce information off each other. And it works so well. And it's lovely to like see it happen and see people who, yes, I could do the research by myself, but like see their curiosity and their personality shine through their research as well.
Yeah.
Has it helped? And a lot of this has got to do with like science communication and bits and pieces as well, and like translating very dry scientific text into something that's informative or that people understand. Have you found that it's like impacted back to your like normal professional life where like you've found it easier to look at these things with context and bits and pieces?
In some ways, I think it's made me more comfortable. Maybe from like a social aspect, like talking to people and, learning how to be more confident about what I'm saying. But yeah, I don't know. It kind of, I don't do so much like science communication in my day to day. So this is sort of my way, the podcast is sort of my way of filling in that gap in my life.
Yeah. How, like, I suppose it's a bit of a creative release for you. I guess you don't get to do a huge amount of this kind of work. Yeah.
So I, did my PhD, sort of originally thought like, I'm going to go be a university professor, and got a little disenchanted with that after teaching for a couple years, which I really loved the teaching, but like wasn't so sure about the research side of it. And just like it's a lot to be a professor. They work very hard. And I was like, maybe I want to be a little more chill than that. So after I taught for a couple years, I ended up going into a lab job. So running a research lab at Northwestern University, which is in Chicago. And so that was like a little bit more of a technical job. And the job that I do now is like a little bit more technical because I'm a chemist. So I'm sort of stuck in a lab all day. And this is my way
it
of
gives you like plenty of, like it gives you plenty of time to like research and think about all of that stuff and, figure out, and think, like sit and think on it. I feel bad because I work in the radio and I'm constantly editing audio. The last thing I want to do is come home and edit a podcast or, message people or do research.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I say like, I wasn't sure that I was ready for the commitment of like being a full-time university professor and having to build a research program and write all these papers and grants on top of like teaching classes and all this stuff. And then I turned around and I work as a scientist, as a researcher. And then I spend my nights and weekends like researching and doing all this extra work on top of it. So like, really, is it different? We don't know.
Who knows? You can never tell. What are you hoping, people get out of, like, obviously you've spent a lot of time explaining these phenomenons and looking at it from a scientific perspective. And, as you said, sometimes they're all horrific when you actually look at the source than, when you're just like talking about them. What are you hoping people get out of those conversations that you are having?
Yeah, that's tough because I think the audience that we attract is probably mainly skeptical to begin with. So we're probably in a little bit of a bubble in that respect. But I think the goal was because of the reason that we started the podcast was feeling like, okay, you've got all of these shows, which like are great. Like the thing is, I love ghost stories. I love all these scary stories. I'm totally down to like suspend disbelief and just like appreciate the story for it being scary. But like I am sort of like naturally a scientist and naturally am going to like question what's going on behind the scenes. So it's like I wanted to create a podcast where it's like, for people like me who like maybe need a little bit more information or like need things to come back down to earth a little bit, but like still, maintain some of the fun behind it. And it's like for people who do listen, who are believers in the paranormal, like there's a spot for everybody. That is great. And I think, I think in today's world, we so badly need people to employ critical thinking and like think about things think about things more scientifically and like believe scientists when they're telling you important things about what's going on in the world. So it's like, if we can bridge that gap a little bit, then that is a great thing. And historically, science and the paranormal has not gotten along because there's always this pushback of like, well, nothing that paranormal researchers or investigators are doing like is scientific. So but they don't, people don't want to hear that.
I think it's really interesting, as you said, that you can bring more value to a story to even people who might not be super keen to hear, an in-depth background on a topic like that. Like it's really, I think it's fascinating. There's this weird assumption, I think, that, if we explain something, it loses its value or mystique or, otherness. And it's so often I sit there and I go, no, it doesn't for me. Like I am always the kind of person who's like, if I can explain it, that's cool. Like,
Right.
I then get to watch this happen. Admittedly, I am the kind of person who will watch like a theatre show and be more excited about the stuff that's moving on in the wing or moving around in the wings than what's going on stage.
Right.
But but I think that there is an element of natural curiosity to find out why and how things work, regardless, and still be able to enjoy, the fun or the magic or something.
Yeah. There's like some, oh gosh, and I forget who said it, but there's some quote that's like, it didn't stop being magic just because you found out how it was done. Like it's okay to learn, the historical or scientific context of something, and it might not be ghosts or it might not be Bigfoot or whatever, but but it's still interesting.
Yeah, and I think when it's very easy to just assume, I don't want to know. I don't want to know what's going on. And it's like, well, no, it's important to understand where this story has come from and how it's come about, because it's so easy to just not think about it and not worry about it. And you're sitting there going, actually, we should be thinking about, especially when it comes to stories. Like, storytelling is such an important part of our culture. And if we don't know where those stories are coming from and maybe how they work and things like that, it becomes harder to tell them, I think. They become less memorable in my head.
Yeah. Well, and with all these things, like all these different phenomena, like they all, for the vast majority, stretch back like until the beginning of humanity. Like, we've always been telling scary stories. There are like ghost stories from the Sumerians in Mesopotamia that were written in cuneiform on these tablets that are like there's one that appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is like the first story that was ever written down. So it's like from the very beginning of when we started to write things down, when we started to record our stories, like things like ghosts have been there the whole time. And I think there's two ways to look at that. Some people will go, well, maybe that means they're real because like they've always been there. So like they're that must mean that they exist in some way. And the other way, which is more akin to how I look at it, is like, well, they've just always played this very important cultural role for us. Yeah. And I think like the fact that ghost stories and how ghosts behave and everything have changed throughout history sort of tells us like, well, they're probably not real because they like reflect specific cultures, and that, doesn't necessarily make sense. If they're what is a ghost? Like, if they're all different, if it's a scientific phenomena that we just don't understand yet, like, well, it has to sort of all be consistent to be able to call it something. Yeah. Call it something scientific.
Highlighting those inconsistencies shows how different experiences have really defined the stories we tell. Especially and I've timed this episode perfectly because we're coming into spooky season.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to sometimes forget, how those stories come about. And, if you're hearing a ghost being described in one way and it's like not the way that you normally know them to be described as, how do you know that that's, not something that you've been taught, and where it's come from, and I think it's so important.
Yeah it's interesting, and I guess people would argue like, oh, maybe there's different types of ghosts, whatever, but it's one of those things that definitely is sort of a sticking point between like the scientific and the paranormal community. Is like, in order to study something, you have to like be able to define what it is, or at least make some sort of hypothesis about what it is. So that way you can define some like study parameters that you're going to look for. But if it's always inconsistent and doesn't occur in like repeatable ways, well, then you can't do it scientifically. So yeah. So I don't know. At some point, it's like we might just have to say, well, we just don't know. Like if you believe, that's great. You do you.
Yeah.
But like you might not ever be a scientific thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, and then knowing where the limits are of scientific explanation, you know, so there's some people out there I find who are like, there's an explanation for everything. And I'm like, well, is there an explanation for everything? I don't think there is. You know, you've got to kind of, you know, allow some things to be unexplainable. And I think that's the beauty of science, is that, you know, scientists have this innate curiosity, and at some point though there's a limit of how, you know, science can explain everything to us. Yeah
I think that's true. And I think even though I would say like I'm, you know, essentially like 100% skeptical about all paranormal stuff at this point in my life, because it's just like the more I learn, the more that is what feels right to me. But at the same time, like I'm no different than anyone else. You know, you have weird things happen, weird coincidences that you're like, man, that really seems like something else is going on here behind the scenes, or like, yeah. So who knows?
Yeah. And I think like having that gut feeling as well of like, you know, something else is going on here. I always found it was really fascinating, you know, speaking to, you know, I work in the arts now, you know, speaking to people who have an arts background who kind of go, oh, you know, that, you know, sometimes there's just like that little bit of lack of curiosity. There's a curiosity about people, and I love people from the arts' curiosity around people, but sometimes there's like that lack of curiosity around things.
Sure.
And it's funny because I work as a journalist, so I kind of straddle the line between, you know, I speak to scientists all the time, but then, you know, we're speaking to people, you know, our career is in the arts and we're editing audio and talking about craft and things.
Yeah.
And it's this weird like dichotomy of like, oh, you know, we're really interested in people, but we're also trying to ask the question of like how and why, which is very scientific.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating, and I love how we people do get to do this. You know, us as podcasters get to sit down and have a think about it and build communities around it, and you know, find like-minded people who are really interested in it all.
Yeah. Well, and that's definitely been our experience. So we went into this thinking like, oh, we want to do something different. We want to do this show like about the science behind the supernatural from a skeptical perspective, and like it doesn't really seem like anyone's doing this. And of course, like they are. It's just that angle is like maybe not quite as popular, so it's like not going to show up on your like recommended podcast list as many as shows that aren't so skeptical tend to be a bit more popular. But like, I know, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole community of people, and we've gotten to connect with scientists who are doing super cool things, like archaeologists looking at all these, you know, archaeologists doing all this like weird spooky stuff, and me just thinking like, man, there are so many other ways that like my career could have gone had I known like about all these cool options that are out there for things that you can study and like that are scientific or academic, but like very much encompass like, you know, all the weird things in the world. So yeah, and there's a lot of other great podcasts who are doing spooky stuff from a skeptical perspective that we've gotten to connect to. And that's been the great thing, is like we're all sort of on this like little team together. So there's not this sense of, you know, we're all competing with one another, and like if someone listens to your show, then like they're not listening to mine, whatever. It's like, no, we're all sharing the same people, and yeah, it's just been like a really great community to be a part of.
I think that's the greatest part about podcasting. You know, it's funny here in Australia, podcasting's massive. And a lot of like our big news companies and big media companies put out a lot of podcasts and they compete in these podcast rankings. And I had a friend of mine tweet something to the effect of like, these podcast rankings are a bit bogus because you have to pay to be in them, and there's heaps of other podcasts that are getting way more listeners that just aren't chasing the prestige of getting, of being named as the most listened to podcast in the country. And it's fascinating because it's like, you speak to indie podcasters or podcasters who genuinely connect with their community and they love it. They love, doing it, and they don't really care about what those numbers look like because it's just not as important to them.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's like nice when you see that a lot of people are out there listening, because it feels like, okay, I'm not doing all this work for nothing. But no, I totally know what you're saying. And I also was recently jaded by finding out that, big podcast awards, which I don't know if they're United States specific, but that even to get nominated, that you had to pay in order to get nominated. And I was like, what? How is that?
Yeah.
How is that fair?
It's just it's not fair. And this is the part that really annoys me is we all use different platforms to put out our podcasts. We all have different media strategies and everything. And it's just really frustrating to sit there and kind of go, how can I improve when so many people are paying to play? It really shouldn't be that way. And it is just very frustrating to know that there are some people out there that don't really care about, the community building aspect of it. For me, my numbers might be terrible, and I don't really care about those numbers. What I really care about is the conversations that this kind of conversation will spark, or the inspiration that I hope I give to people. As you said before, we aren't, there are so many other things that people can be investigating. You look at the careers that are on offer in schools and things like that, and it's very down the line, you could be a scientist, you could be a rocket scientist, you could be, and it's there are so many more options out there. And if you can instill a passion or, in one of the topics that you talk about in someone and they become a specialist in it, then, that's a win in my head.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just knowing that things like bioarchaeology, where you're looking at, specifically at archaeology of skeletons, and it's just, there's so many weird things that are out there. There's history of science, but you can look at history of alchemy and stuff like that, which sort of as a whole rabbit hole of weird, spooky, mystical stuff in the past. And there's a lot of cool jobs out there that people are doing.
Yeah, exactly.
That I would love to do. But it's fine. I get to talk to them about their jobs, and that's pretty awesome too.
Yeah, it's just so, and this is being able to speak to people, being able to connect with people that you would have never have thought, to connect with, to think that, I regularly go on holidays with people I produce podcasts with, and, these people weren't in my lives 3, 4, 5 years ago. It's given me very much this kind of great new energy to go and experiment and try new things. And every time I speak to them, it's lovely. And I think, if we, how good is the internet for a second, but also, how nice is it to be inspired by other people? Yeah,
definitely. It's a really good, it's a really good community. And especially I think the indie podcast community, there's so many good things happening. And it's it is fun to watch people in that community, if they manage to sort of take off at some point and get big, and it's exciting.
Oh, everyone applauds them. And it's funny because there are some people who are active in the indie podcast space who are really shouldn't be classified as indie podcasters, who are just these lovely people that are earn their living through podcasting, and that's their job, and then like they come, they take the time out to go on someone's rinky-dink little podcast out of nowhere, and chat to someone on the other side of the country. It's just it's crazy.
Yeah. I think if I could do it full time, I probably would. I don't know. I would miss science, I think. and miss research.
The other
it's
thing
tough
is
to
that,
say.
I think it's important, like what your podcast aims to do, it's important to have like one foot in the real world and kind of go, this is what like everyone else is up to, or this is what I've been doing at work this week.
Yeah.
And then you jump into something different,
Yeah.
I think if this was my job, I'd find it very tiring.
Yeah. And it's like I said, the podcast and doing things like making videos for TikTok and I guess Instagram to some extent now is like lets me get out there and like do the science communication and be creative in ways that I love, but while still maintaining this career in science, which is like what I'm trained for, and like also just feels like sort of part of my like credibility in some ways. Like it would be really weird. Like we started the podcast as like we're scientists, but like we really love spooky stuff, and it's like it would be weird for me if I was not a scientist anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's also like sometimes there's a bit of branding as well. It's like, we are scientists. We do this for our day-to-day jobs. Kind of brings a bit of authority sometimes of like, I know what I'm talking about ish.
Yeah. Do I ever really know?
No. Do we ever really fully know everything? Really? No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Here's what I've learned. It's like nobody really knows. We just all, get better at faking it.
Yeah. Where do you hope the podcast will take you in the future?
Oh, gosh. I don't know.
Not to set expectations or anything.
No, it's okay. I'm thinking on it because I'll be vague. We are just wrapping up a really big project, and we haven't recorded podcast episodes for like 3 months because of it. So that's probably why I'm like a little rusty today. But it's a project related to the podcast. That's like literally all I can say at this point. It's very exciting. And it's like one of those things where it's like, I cannot believe this is real life. And this is like where this has taken us. So yeah, I know that's very vague, but I'm not allowed to say things publicly yet.
That's
Hopefully
exciting.
That's like a little
building
intrigue.
up the suspense. I love it.
Yeah. So that would be like my ultimate example of like, wow, I cannot believe that I ended up here. But I think I'm not clear how to answer it because like I don't even know if I ever had like expectations for how the podcast would go and that we would end up where we are. Like it's just so I'm so grateful, and like it's just so amazing to me on a day-to-day basis that like we have like thousands of people who listen to us, and that I've got like 170,000 followers on TikTok and like 18,000 on Instagram. And like this sounds all very braggy, but like I say it because it's like I never in my wildest dreams would have thought that like I would have that sort of reach, at least on the internet. So I don't like know that I have any expectations beyond like I just want to keep doing it because it's just such a fun thing for me to do, and I love all the people that we get to talk to, and I love like interacting with people who listen, and it's just like built ourselves this little community that if all I ever get out of it is like I get to keep talking to those people and like feel like I've contributed something to like, I don't know, the skeptical discourse on all this stuff in the end, like then great.
And it's always like It's always so easy to kind of get bogged down in, the little things, oh, I haven't edited that, or I need to chase this up, or especially when it's a big project and bits and pieces, but like the excitement around like building tension and, chatting to people and like working on the project, and then the reaction from your community, it's just always amazing.
Yeah.
And it gives you so much energy to like keep doing those kinds of things, which is always really lovely.
Yeah. So it's just like every day I'm amazed that it's gotten as far as it has.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm just happy to just kind of vibe and keep doing it, and we'll see. Like I said, we've got this big project which like honestly might shift everything, but we're going to find out.
We'll find out. I love that,
it's so vague. I've literally been told, like, you can't say anything about it yet. So I'm probably saying too much already. So I just, like, shut up.
I'm terrible at keeping secrets myself. So it's one of those things where I'm like, totally understand. It's like, there's no way I can even, like, hint at something to people. I'm terrible at it. I'll end up giving the whole thing away by accident.
Oh, yeah. Believe me. It's been a struggle. And, like, it's been a struggle because we've sort of had to take a break from podcasting to like do all this extra work, and I'm just like, oh, like I really want to tell you guys like why we haven't released an episode in 3 months, but like literally all I can say is like you're gonna be happy about it. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well,
it's crazy.
I love it. Like that's the kind of energy you want always, it's never, you never want something to be boring, and it's like you want to be so excited that you're going to accidentally spoil everything for everyone.
Exactly.
Well, Meagan, thank you so much for coming on Content and Capable. It's been amazing to chat with you and hear your story. And thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm glad we were able to work out a time slot that worked, because we were just finishing up this big project. I was like, I can't do anything until September. So, yeah.
Has there been anything that you... where can people find you on the internet? I forgot the questions I need to do.
Well, so we do have a website that notoriously likes to go down frequently because we are a super professional organization. But we are at SpookyScienceSisters.com, and that will have links to like all the other social media. But we're Spooky SciPod, so Spooky SCIPOD on Instagram and Threads, and I'm Spooky Science on TikTok, and I think that's like the main places where you find me.
And has there been anything that you've been reading, listening, watching that you wanted to plug?
Oh, sure, if that's a thing that I can do. Okay, so it's by Adam Frank, who I think is a physicist, I want to say. But anyway, he wrote a book called The Little Book of Aliens, and it's like a pretty concise read, but I read it recently, and I guess like if you're into spooky things, particularly UFOs and the potential of like extraterrestrial life, he tells you all about like what alien life might actually look like and what science has to say about the whole like aliens coming down to visit Earth and all the history about that, and what scientists are looking for, like actually looking for out in space that like could be evidence of extraterrestrial life beyond our planet or beyond our galaxy. And it's just like, it's really great. He does a great job of breaking everything down for like laymen, and yeah. Anyway.
I love that. That's amazing. And like, I think, we've in the last like few years, pop culture has spoken so much about aliens that sometimes it's like really hard to kind of understand what they might look like. And we've had so many like different representations of aliens on our screen and in text.
Yeah. It's a great book. And yeah, I guess if I had like a recent related read to our podcast, that's one I would plug.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, you can find me at sam.journalist on Instagram and on TikTok. I'm also regularly on the ABC at ABC Southeast SA. If you're in Australia and you want to have a sticky beak at what I do as a day job, I've been doing a little bit more there, slowly kind of getting into the swing of things after 8 months of working in a new organisation at a new location. So that's been a lot of fun. You can find the podcast at Content, the letter N Capable, on Instagram, and we're on Threads and Facebook and bits and pieces. The thing I'm going to plug this week is an album by RAYE, RAYE. She's a British artist, and last year I remember seeing clips on TikTok because I was following an organist who actually played in this performance, but she did a performance at the Royal Albert Hall of her album My 21st Century Symphony, and she played like the whole thing with an orchestra backing and a choir, and one of the songs is an organ in it, and it's just amazing. For like a month, I just like listened to this straight. So it's like one of those things where it just became like all the different things you could hear with like different headphones on, or although like it's such fun. There's some really great songs in it. Highlights for me are Oscar-winning Tears, Environmental Anxiety, and Escapism. It's very existentialist, the lyrics, but like some of the music is so fun to listen to, I think it's so cool to like have a pop album, covered by an orchestra. It's just so fun, and as a musician, I love it.
Awesome.
But yeah, thank you once again, Meagan, for coming on the podcast. It's been amazing to chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Content and Capable was recorded, edited, and produced by Samuel O'Brien. You can follow the podcast at Content, the letter N Capable on Instagram, and you can find it on Facebook. You can also send an email through to contentandcapablepod@gmail.com with any of your thoughts, queries, or concerns. The best way to support the podcast is to leave a review on your preferred podcatcher so more people can hear the podcast. The art was done by Opia, and the music was written, edited, and produced by Jason Hilton. Content and Capable is proud to be a part of the Deus Ex Media Network, where you can find a podcast for any of your nerdy interests.
I'm Christina Kahn.
And I'm Leela Hilton.
And this is Burn Before Reading,
the podcast about shiterature.
We're here to examine the terrible writing we did when we were younger.
Like that school project you were really proud of.
Or that poem you wrote when you got dumped.
Well, how about that apology letter you wrote to your mom when you got into that fight?
Or the song you recorded before you knew how to write music.
Okay, don't at me. And we're here to talk about other cringy literary topics along the way.
Like the Library of Alexandria.
And Dewey Decimal.
His name was Melville Dewey.
Oh, well, do we want to get the clips rolling?
I don't think I ever recovered from this in terms of being cool.
Why did I say any of this?
I do like the drama.
So there is actually quite a bit to unpack here.
Oh, all this drama was so addictive as a teenager.
There's no punctuation to it. I'll start with that.
I actually have no memory of this.
There were so many lies that I was telling it.
It's not terrible.
No one really taught me how to write a good short story.
That was a journey.
Listen to Burn Before Reading
every Wednesday, wherever pods are cast.
Thank you for listening to Content and Capable. Don't forget to rate and review, and we'll see you next week for another episode.
Deus Ex Media.